My beloved child, if these words have reached you today, then stay with me for a moment, because what you are about to hear is not an ordinary story. It began with a moment no one expected. A room filled with voices suddenly fell silent as someone you never imagined would do this stood before everyone with trembling hands and an unsteady heart. They had spent so long hiding their emotions that people believed they had none left to reveal. But in one unforgettable instant, everything changed. They took a deep breath, looked into the crowd, and with a voice that carried both fear and courage, they cried out their love for you without caring who was watching. Faces froze. Conversations stopped. Even those who doubted your connection could not believe what they had just witnessed. Something inside them had become stronger than fear, stronger than pride, and stronger than every opinion surrounding them. As this unfolds, clarity will come, because that single moment was only the beginning of a much greater revelation. No one expected what happened next. Instead of laughter or rejection, an overwhelming silence filled the air. Every person present waited for someone to speak first, but nobody could. The truth had arrived too suddenly. The one who had shouted their feelings looked around with tears in their eyes, not because they regretted their words, but because they had finally stopped pretending. They realized that carrying hidden emotions had become heavier than revealing them. Deep inside, they had reached a point where silence was no longer possible. This may resonate as we continue, because sometimes the greatest battles are fought inside the heart before they are ever seen by the world. What everyone witnessed that day was not weakness, it was the moment someone chose honesty over fear. Then something even more unexpected unfolded. Among the crowd stood a person who had quietly watched this connection for a very long time. That individual slowly stepped forward and spoke words that surprised everyone. They admitted they had always seen the invisible bond between you both, even when neither of you could recognize it yourselves. Those words changed the atmosphere completely. The crowd no longer saw confusion, they saw sincerity. One by one, expressions softened, and people who had once questioned everything suddenly understood that real feelings cannot remain hidden forever. The person who confessed their love realized they were no longer carrying the weight alone. For the first time in a long while, hope replaced doubt, and the future no longer seemed impossible. Something huge is waiting for you, because this story has not yet reached its most important turning point. But the greatest surprise came after everyone believed the moment was over. As people slowly began walking away, the person who had confessed quietly whispered something that almost no one else heard. They said they had been waiting for the perfect moment for far longer than anyone could imagine, believing that one day courage would finally defeat fear. They understood that no matter how uncertain the road ahead appeared, hiding genuine feelings would only create more distance. That realization became the true victory of the day, not the crowd, not the reactions, but the decision to stop living behind silence. Stay with me for a moment, because what happens after this confession will reveal why everything unfolded exactly when it did. And now the final piece begins to reveal itself. Sometimes life creates moments that appear impossible until they suddenly become reality. The confession that echoed before everyone was not the ending of this story, it was the first chapter of a completely different journey. Every hesitation, every unanswered question, and every unexpected delay had quietly prepared this unforgettable moment. Those who witnessed it walked away remembering not the noise of the crowd, but the courage of one heart choosing truth over fear. As this unfolds, clarity will come, because the next chapter will uncover what happened after that public confession, and why the consequences left everyone speechless in ways no one could have predicted. A strange feeling lingered long after the crowd began to leave. No one could explain why the atmosphere still felt different, as though the confession had awakened something that had been waiting beneath the surface for a very long time. The person who had openly declared their love for you stood quietly, watching everyone disappear one by one. Their heart was finally lighter, but they also knew that the biggest test had only just begun. Stay with me for a moment, because what happened in the next few minutes surprised even the people who believed they had already seen everything. A familiar face slowly approached with an expression no one could read. Instead of questioning the confession, they smiled gently and said, "The truth always finds its way into the light." Those simple words carried more meaning than anyone realized. As this unfolds, clarity will come, because that unexpected conversation unlocked memories and emotions that had remained hidden for far too long. The person who confessed their feelings finally admitted something they had never shared with anyone before. They revealed that there were countless moments when they wanted to reach out to you but allowed fear to win. Every missed opportunity became another silent regret. Every day they convinced themselves that waiting was the safer choice, yet waiting only made their heart heavier. Looking back, they realized they had spent more time imagining conversations with you than actually having them. That realization changed everything. They no longer wanted to wonder what could have been. Instead, they wanted to move forward with honesty, regardless of the outcome. This may resonate as we continue, because many people spend years hiding their truest feelings, only to discover that courage was the missing piece all along. If this story is keeping you engaged so far, don't forget to share this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments, because the next revelation connects every moment you've heard until now. Just when it seemed the emotions had settled, another unexpected detail emerged. Someone quietly handed the person a small folded note that had been kept for much longer than anyone imagined. The message inside wasn't dramatic or mysterious. It simply reminded them that genuine connections are built on trust, patience, and honesty, not fear. Reading those words brought an overwhelming sense of peace. They finally understood that their confession wasn't about changing everyone's opinion. It was about choosing authenticity instead of silence. Something huge is waiting for you, because the meaning behind that simple note would soon become far more important than anyone expected. As they looked toward the path ahead, they realized this journey was no longer about proving anything to the world. It was about becoming the person they wished they had been from the very beginning, someone brave enough to speak from the heart without letting uncertainty decide their future. The crowd had witnessed the confession, but only a few people understood its true significance. The real transformation had happened within. Fear had finally lost its grip, and hope had quietly taken its place. That change could never be taken away, no matter what happened next. Just when everyone believed the story had reached its calmest point, one final surprise appeared before the day came to an end. A message arrived that no one had expected, carrying words that would completely reshape everything you think you know about this connection. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Yet it held the power to change the direction of the entire story. The person stared at those words in complete silence, knowing that the next decision would influence everything from this moment forward. And that is exactly where the next chapter begins. The next morning felt unlike any other. It was as if the world had quietly paused, waiting for one final piece of the story to fall into place. The message that arrived the previous evening remained unopened for several moments because the person who had confessed their love wanted to prepare their heart before reading it. Stay with me for a moment, because what those words revealed was far more meaningful than anyone expected. When they finally unfolded the message, they discovered it wasn't filled with judgment or doubt. Instead, it carried a reminder that true connections are tested by courage, patience, and honesty. At that instant, they realized that their public confession had inspired others to believe that genuine feelings should never remain hidden forever. As this unfolds, clarity will come, because this unexpected response changed their understanding of everything that had happened. For the first time in a very long while, they stopped asking themselves whether they had done the right thing. Instead, they began asking a different question: why did it take me so long to speak from my heart? Every memory suddenly made sense. Every delay, every moment of hesitation, and every silent goodbye had been preparing them for the courage they finally found. They understood that fear had never been the enemy, it had simply been a challenge they needed to overcome. This may resonate as we continue, because many meaningful journeys begin only after someone chooses truth over uncertainty. That realization filled them with a quiet confidence they had never experienced before. As the day continued, people who had witnessed the confession began sharing what they had truly felt during that unforgettable moment. Some admitted they had never seen such sincerity. Others confessed that they had been deeply moved because they recognized how difficult it is to express genuine emotions in front of others. Unexpectedly, the story spread not because of drama, but because of courage. People weren't talking about the crowd anymore. They were talking about the honesty behind those words. Something huge is waiting for you, because the impact of one brave decision was reaching hearts far beyond that single gathering. It became clear that authenticity has a way of inspiring people in ways no one can predict. Then, just as peace seemed to settle over everything, another unexpected moment unfolded. The person quietly looked toward the place where they had first spoken those unforgettable words and smiled, not because every question had been answered, but because they no longer feared the future. They finally understood that love isn't measured by how loudly it is declared, but by the strength to remain sincere even when the outcome is unknown. That quiet realization became the greatest reward of all. The weight they had carried for so long had disappeared, replaced by hope and gratitude for the journey ahead. Yet the story still wasn't complete. As the sun began to set, someone arrived with a truth that had been waiting to be revealed at exactly the right time. It wasn't about changing the past. It was about unlocking a future no one had imagined. The person listened carefully, and with every word, their eyes filled with a new sense of purpose. What they heard next would become the most unforgettable chapter of this entire journey, because it would finally explain why every delay, every silence, and every unexpected twist had led to this very moment. As evening quietly settled, the final visitor stepped forward with a calm expression that immediately changed the atmosphere. There was no rush, no loud announcement, only a quiet confidence that made everyone pay attention. Stay with me for a moment, because what this person shared connected every unanswered question from the beginning of this story. They gently explained that the confession you witnessed was never a sudden decision. It had been growing inside that heart for a very long time. Every delay, every moment of silence, and every unanswered feeling had slowly built the courage needed for that unforgettable day. As this unfolds, clarity will come, because the biggest surprise was never the public confession itself, it was discovering how long that love had remained quietly protected. The visitor then revealed something that no one in the crowd had noticed. While everyone had been focused on the powerful confession, they had missed the small details that mattered most. The trembling hands, the deep breath before speaking, and the peaceful smile afterward all told the same story. This was someone who had finally chosen authenticity over fear. In that moment, everyone understood that true strength is not found in perfect words but in honest ones. This may resonate as we continue, because many people spend years waiting for the perfect time, only to realize that courage creates the perfect moment. If this journey has touched your heart so far, be sure to share this video, subscribe to the channel, and let someone else experience this story too, because the final revelation is closer than ever. Then came the most unexpected realization of all. The person who had confessed looked back at the crowd one last time and noticed something they hadn't seen before. The same people who once seemed uncertain were now smiling with quiet encouragement. Nothing had been forced. Nothing had been demanded. Respect had naturally replaced doubt because sincerity has a way of speaking louder than fear ever can. Something huge is waiting for you, because that silent acceptance became the turning point that transformed an unforgettable confession into the beginning of a brand new chapter filled with hope. As they walked away from that place, they no longer carried the weight of unanswered questions. Instead, they carried peace. They understood that no matter what tomorrow would bring, they had already achieved something remarkable, they had chosen truth instead of regret. The journey was no longer about convincing anyone else. It had become a journey of inner freedom, where honesty had finally replaced uncertainty. Every step forward felt lighter, and every breath carried the quiet confidence that comes from living without hidden emotions. Just when it seemed this chapter had reached its conclusion, one final moment unfolded. A familiar voice gently called their name from behind. They slowly turned around, their heart racing once again, wondering who had returned and what they were about to hear. The expression on that person's face suggested that one last truth had remained unspoken until now, a truth capable of changing everything that follows. And that final revelation is where the next chapter begins. The familiar voice echoed one more time, and for a brief moment, it felt as though time itself had paused. The person slowly turned around, expecting another question or another opinion. Instead, they were met with a warm smile that carried no judgment, only understanding. Stay with me for a moment, because this was the moment that gave meaning to everything that had happened before. The voice softly said, "Your courage has reminded everyone that the strongest hearts are the ones willing to be honest." Those words settled deeply within them. They realized that the greatest victory was never about being noticed by the crowd, it was about finally becoming the person they were always meant to be. As this unfolds, clarity will come, because the story you have followed from the beginning was never just about one confession, it was about the power of choosing truth over silence. As they reflected on every step of the journey, each moment began to fit together like pieces of a puzzle. The hesitation had taught patience. The silence had taught self-discovery. The confession had taught courage. And the unexpected kindness from others had taught hope. Nothing had been wasted. Every challenge had quietly prepared them for this life-changing moment. This may resonate as we continue, because sometimes the greatest blessings arrive only after we stop allowing fear to guide our decisions. They finally understood that genuine love grows stronger when it is rooted in honesty, kindness, and respect rather than uncertainty. Then came the final realization that no one had expected. The crowd had remembered the loud confession, but the people closest to the moment remembered something even more meaningful, the peaceful expression that appeared afterward. It was the face of someone who no longer carried regret. That peace became an inspiration to everyone who had witnessed it. Something huge is waiting for you, because the true miracle wasn't the reaction of the crowd. It was the quiet transformation of a heart that had finally found freedom. Sometimes the biggest change happens within us long before the world can see it. As the journey reached its closing chapter, they looked toward the future without fear. They no longer wondered whether speaking honestly had been the right choice. They knew it had. Whatever tomorrow would bring, they would face it with the same courage that had carried them through this unforgettable day. The crowd slowly disappeared, the voices faded into silence, but one truth remained stronger than ever. Sincerity leaves a lasting impact that no passing moment can erase. Every step forward now felt lighter because they were walking without hidden burdens. And so this story comes to a close, not with unanswered questions, but with a reminder worth carrying into every new beginning. When fear tells you to remain silent, remember that honesty has the power to transform not only your own heart but also the hearts of those around you. The confession that once seemed impossible became the very moment that changed everything. What began with uncertainty ended with hope, courage, and a future filled with possibility. And perhaps the greatest revelation of all is this: the most unforgettable stories are not created by perfect circumstances, they are created by ordinary people who choose extraordinary courage when it matters most.